Hello everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I always start with a couple of announcements. First of all, for those of you who are interested in newsletter articles, we call it the COVID collection, the articles that have appeared in the newsletter every week since this began. I think there are probably close to 9 or 10 now. If you are a subscriber, we will send you the back issues. If you're not a subscriber, we can't send these out every week to thousands of people. So you can email me at pampopper@msn.com. We'll sign you up as a subscriber and send you those back issues. For those of you who want transcripts of these video clips, they are available on the members site. And so if you're not a member, you're welcome to join, and our basic membership is very inexpensive, but you do have to be a member to access those. And where appropriate, those do have references too. So lots of stuff we do for free. Can't do everything for free. Sorry about that. My folks like eating and paying their mortgages and all that good stuff, right? So that's that. Second thing that I want to talk about is just a hint. We're almost ready to launch our new initiative. I know you guys are restless and you're wanting to take your rights back, and we have a great plan. Hang tight. We just have a few more days and we're going to be ready to do this. So announcements will be next week, and I'll be more specific next Monday for sure in the newsletter. Third thing, some of you know I'm writing a book. It's called COVID Operation: What Happened, Why It Happened, and What's Next. I have a wonderful co-author, excellent writer, knows a lot about many things from economics to biology and that sort of thing. And we're going to do a pre-launch event, one virtual and one actually live here in our Central Ohio office, where we'll be presenting some information, like who really is behind this, what happened, the treatment debacle, what the media did, what happened with the states and the lockdowns, and actually that it was quite predictable, all about the testing, how worried should you be about the future, and of course the dreaded vaccine. Lots of time for questions from the group. And the dates are Friday, July 24th from 7 to 9:30, and Saturday, that's the teleconference one, and then Saturday from 1 to 3:30. So we are gradually crawling out of hibernation here and having people back in our center. Yoga studios open, athletics is open. June 30th, we're starting our every Tuesday night something happening at our Central Ohio facility. And then this is our first special event after all the lockdown and quarantine. So I hope some of you will want to join us. Limited seating, we have limitations in terms of how many the room holds here in our office, our big room. And then of course only so many lines for the teleconference. So it'll be like the other COVID related events, we always sell them out. And so if you want the inside scoop and lots of time to question us before the book comes out, this is your opportunity to do it. And then one last thing I'll mention, we have a membership special. Basic memberships are $99 and include access to the articles library, the COVID transcripts, our 101, 201 courses, both online and through teleconference, and a textbook and conversations with Pam, and an Earn While You Learn program so that you can buy other of our courses, qualified to take some of those even for free. And between now and July 31st, if you decide that you want to get a basic membership, you'll get 2 months of free yoga classes at our studio here, or if you're not in Central Ohio or live too far away, 2 months of access to our online yoga platform, and a free workout either here, or 2 months of access to our online gym workout. Okay, so we're throwing in some extra goodies. We know that people are anxious to get life back to normal. We'll give you some incentives to join and participate in our programming, and anybody, any place in the world can do this. We have members in 33 countries, so it doesn't matter if you don't live here. Almost everything we do, I mean, you can't go to hot yoga from Japan, but you certainly can participate in almost everything else we do, and you can participate in yoga classes online with us, okay? So let's get into the programming of the day. I want to talk about, today, I want to talk about tests, and my gosh, the news about tests is all bad in terms of accuracy. And so I wrote an article that included a lot of data on this, but I'm going to give you some updated data and also some up-and-coming tests that I think are pretty scary. Actually, I think we should be pretty alarmed at some of the things that are coming. So I'll just start by saying when the fake pandemic was declared, the scramble began to do something, anything to respond. And, when you don't have a real pandemic, you can just make stuff up. And our elected officials and health officials have done such a good job of that. But one of the things that we're learning is that brilliant rich people can sometimes be really stupid, and they didn't think through the fact that at some point in time, people were going to figure out what was going on and know the real story, and that's starting to come out. So the FDA, by background, used its emergency powers to approve dozens of tests which were developed quickly and not subjected to any type of research that would validate them. And by the way, this is not unusual behavior for the FDA. When there's no emergency going on, they approved like 96% of the drugs. And for new devices, all you have to do is prove that, or show that, don't really have to prove, that the device that you want to market is something like an existing device on the market already, and then you don't have to do anything at all except announce that you're going to start selling it now. What a great arrangement, right? But the difference between the usual criminal collusion between the drug and device makers and the FDA is the consequences of the numbers of people who have been affected. So, millions of people are affected every year by bad drugs and devices, but we're talking about a lot of very healthy people, as you'll see, that were impacted by the stupidity and criminal collusion of the FDA and other government agencies with the drug companies. So from the beginning, it's been flawed. All right. So the World Health Organization had put out guidelines for a test. They actually had developed some specifications, and who knows if they were good or bad, but the CDC basically ignored that. They developed their own. They put out the test. It was horrifically inaccurate. The tests were recalled, and then the scramble began to develop tests, and hundreds of companies were testing the tests, as it were. And in fact, there was a moratorium for a period of time saying that people shouldn't develop tests. And then when there wasn't any testing, because if you're going to keep a fake pandemic going, you got to have some fake tests going on. They said, oh, no, go on ahead, go out there and develop some tests. Well, they were approved, as I mentioned, under this emergency use authorization, which means that they were only required to perform well in test tubes, not in any real world setting. And this is a problem, according to David Pride, Associate Director of Microbiology at the University of California, San Diego. Several issues were never addressed as the result of all of this rushing around. One is the risk of cross-reactivity with other viruses. Another is the presence of coronavirus is likely to remain for several months after the infectious period has passed, which means that tests are useless for determining who should be quarantined. Yet another is the risk of cross-contamination, particularly when you test large numbers of people in crowded settings, because even the tiniest amount of cross-contamination can lead to a false positive result, which means that many people who have never been exposed to COVID or who have long passed the contagious period were likely quarantined and identified as contagious. The tests are produced by several vendors, and each has established its own and as yet unmeasured accuracy. In other words, they basically said, we tested it 60 times in a test tube, we say it's accurate. That was really all that was required. And the variations are unlimited, according to Dr. Pride. He said that some tests can detect as few as 100 copies of a viral gene, while other tests require 400 copies. Additionally, most will show positive results for 6 months when the actual time, and I can't emphasize this enough, that the person is contagious is only 6 months. And so if I had this back in January, and I get somehow herded into testing, which I'll be talking about later in the week, I could end up being quarantined, depending on what state I live in, and actually not be contagious, and the time may have well passed. It appears that the testing is going to go on for a long time. If you're going to keep a fake pandemic going, you got to keep the fear going, and it's important to report new cases daily. So, if we were trying to get people to be afraid of driving, we would get on the news every night and talk about all the car accidents that happened all over the world, so everybody'd be terrified to back out of the driveway every day. Some crazy experts, like Dr. Stephen Woloshin of Dartmouth College, are suggesting that perhaps the FDA should investigate the tests further to determine which ones, if any, are accurate. Now, that is a crazy idea when you're dealing with COVID, the idea that something should be tested for accuracy. That's crazy talk. There are 110 different screening tests in use, and the FDA says it's asked the makers of the test to perform follow-up studies, and it's tracking problems with the tests. It's asked them to do it. How about You're a government agency, you regulate these people, you say you want it done. Well, that's some more crazy talk, right? Because if the drug companies and device makers are your business partners, well, you just don't talk to them that way. What we now know is that the makers of these tests can't report how often the tests falsely clear or wrongly diagnose patients. We do not know that at this time. The only requirement for approval was 60 test tube samples, which according to Dr. Robert Kaplan and Stanford University have little resemblance to real-world situations. He says, quote, "You're testing people in parking lots. The patients are extremely anxious. They're unable to follow instructions." The FDA issued a warning to doctors in May concerning Abbott Labs' rapid ID Now test, stating that it was inaccurate between 1/3 and 50% of the time. Now, I want you to think about that. That's not even looking at picking up viral copies of something that else, another type of virus, or that you could still test positive for COVID even though you had it 6 months ago and you're not contagious anymore. It's just inaccurate for any purpose 1/3 to 1/2 of the time. Accuracy issues with this test have been identified by researchers at Stanford, Cleveland Clinic, and Loyola University. Abbott denies this, but it hasn't submitted any data, so I guess, like the FDA, we're just supposed to take their word for it, even though people are being tested and quarantined every single day, and the news is full of all the positive tests because we have to scare everybody, make sure they think there's still a pandemic going on. Well, if the error rate is as high as 50%, we inevitably have millions of people who might have been told they're negative when they actually were contagious and could have been dangerous to be around vulnerable populations perhaps, and then we have millions of people who tested positive who are really negative. It really doesn't matter to the promoters of the fake pandemic. False positives help them to keep the fear and hysteria going, but it should matter to the millions of people who have been wrongly diagnosed or cleared using these awful tests. And we have more bad tests coming soon. You always do something every week about what's next. So look what they have in store for us now. Researchers at a veterinary school in Paris, France, have conducted an experiment with 8 Belgian Malinois shepherd dogs showing that they can identify infected people based on the smell of their sweat. They collected samples, 168 samples from armpit perspiration from COVID positive people, and used 18 dogs who were trained already to detect explosives and survivors during search and rescue missions. Then they placed jars containing the samples of COVID positive perspiration in a line, and they had funnels, and bottom line, the dogs seemed to be able to pick up the scent 95% of the time. Now, I want you to think about this for a while. This means that, if you go to the airport, they have dogs that are sniffing out drugs and explosives, and I've never really minded that too much. I don't know about you, but I think it's a good idea not to let people travel around with a lot of illicit drugs, and I think it's a really good idea not to have explosives on airplanes. Call me crazy, but I think that's good. But this is an entirely different thing we're talking about here. Think about being at the airport and some dog comes up and sniffs you. This is an invasion of privacy and identifies you as COVID positive. Think about going out for a run in the park and the law enforcement's walking around with these dogs looking for infected people, or at an outdoor concert if we're ever able to have one again. There's a lawsuit in Ohio, by the way, to allow outdoor concerts in view of the protests with all the thousands of people in the streets downtown. It's kind of hard to imagine how you can forbid a concert from taking place outdoors if you're going to let people loot and riot and protest by the thousands in downtowns of cities all over. And you notice with the independent country of Chad or whatever they're calling themselves in Seattle, there's no problem with those people milling about in there in close quarters either. So this irritates me quite a bit, as you might imagine. But anyway, I have a big problem with this. I think that this is an invasion of privacy, and I'd love to see some lawsuits about this. We need more lawsuits, lots more lawsuits. And there's more. Researchers in South Africa are trying to assess a breath test for COVID-19, which will deliver results in less than 5 minutes. Now, I already reported that the most inaccurate test we have for COVID is Abbott's rapid response test. So what we really need is some other ill-conceived thing that's supposed to act quickly and is inaccurate too. And we're evaluating, the researchers say, if this is the same for a virus like COVID, our body responds immediately to the virus metabolically, and in the process, unique gases are produced. They're a signature of the virus, and the breath test would be able to capture this. So diagnostic tests modeled around the same type of technology for asthma and lung disease are globally in use, and as you might imagine, there are problems with these. They're not very specific or sensitive, according to molecular biologists, which means that you get false positives and false negatives. In other words, what we're really doing with these two additional tests is we have one that's a complete invasion of privacy. You can be minding your own business, listening to a concert in the Commons in downtown Columbus, and some dog comes up and identifies you as COVID. What are they going to do? Arrest you, quarantine you, ask you to leave, shoot you, put you in a camp? I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't even throw those things out there. I think we give the Nazis that are running our country and our states ideas when we suggest those things. But anyway, and they've already acknowledged that other viruses and prior infections will cause the same changes in the breath. So it seems like the powers that be aren't happy to have created a fake pandemic and used fake and bad tests to diagnose people as cases or clear them, as the case may be, gin up a lot of fear based on all the cases all the time, and they're coming up with new and interesting ways to continue this into indefinitely. It sounds like we're just going to be scared half to death, and we're going to have more and more excuses to lock everybody down and continue these draconian rules by using more and more bad tests. Well, we'll see about that. Like I said, announcements coming soon. All right, that's all for today. Pass this on, please, to anybody who you think would benefit from watching it, and I will be back to you tomorrow with more news. And of course, if you're interested in any of the things that I talked about here, please email me at pampopper@msn.com.